to the church of Pergamon, it says the throne of Satan, where Satan dwells, the throne of Satan. Why? Pergamon was a pagan place. You went to the mountain of Pergamon. You had all these pagan things, and the key thing they had was the altar of Pergamon. The altar of Pergamon is an altar to the god Zeus, the head of the gods, and the Bible calls it the throne of Satan. As the gospel spreads to the Roman Empire, eventually people start abandoning all these things. The altar of Pergamon falls into disuse, it falls into ruins, it's gone. The throne of Satan is dormant for about almost 2,000 years. But then what happens? Then in the 19th century, a man starts uncovering the throne of Satan, the altar of Pergamon. And he sends the pieces back to his homeland. In his homeland, they reconstruct the altar of Zeus, the altar of Pergamon, throne of Satan. What was his homeland? His homeland was Germany. When Hitler was railing, and you see him, railing satanically, he is standing on his platform that he had especially built, which is a recreation of the altar of Pergamon. It's a throne of Satan. Here Hitler is speaking from the throne of Satan in Nuremberg. Remember, the enemy hates the Jewish people, wants to destroy the Jewish people. There's no accident this is all happening. He wants to wipe them out. So he uses Hitler, and this man who's possessed. You have the armies of the West, the American Allied Army coming from the West. You have the Red Army coming from the East. And it's like the whole world's being drawn to the city where it all began, the devastation, the place of the throne of Satan. What happens now? What happens to the world? What happens is America and Russia are in Berlin. Berlin, the enemy wants destruction, and he wants the world to be destroyed. And he's the god of division. What happens is Berlin is divided in two, and that the division of the entire world is going to begin in the city of the altar of Satan. From that is going to come the Cold War. From that, Berlin is divided, Germany is divided, the world is divided as two warring camps ready for destruction. Let me just fast forward for a second. What we're going to see in this one is that all of us here, our lives were almost destroyed, linked to the altar of Satan. That everyone who's watching this, either your life would have been killed, would have been destroyed, or your life never would have happened if the enemy had his way. The enemy is the destroyer. So first you have the entire war. Most of our lives, we grew up, we went in air raid drills, get your bomb shelters, because there was this threat of destruction over the whole world, beginning in Berlin where the altar was. This was the center of the Cold War, the same city where it was. But what happened to that altar? When, the Nazis had it, what happened now? What happened was the altar at the end of the war passed from the Nazis and went into the hands of the Red Army, the Soviet Union. So you went from Hitler, the Nazism, the worst evil then, now it goes to the key evil of modern times. They have the throne of Satan. They have the altar. So, and in fact, that's when the Soviet Union really comes out. That's when you have not just, the Soviet Union, that's when the Soviet Union begins taking over. That's when all of a sudden Eastern Europe is under the iron grip of the Soviet Union. Then the world, and then China becomes, and then one out of every three people in the world is under this bondage of the power that has the throne of Satan. And so, what was, in the times of the Bible, or in between the Testaments, you had that throne with Antiochus, where he sit on the Temple Mount, the altar of Zeus, same thing. And what did he do? He banned the word of God. He persecuted God's people. Well, what happened all over the world? What happened through communism, which had the throne? They banned the word of God. They persecuted God's people, threw God's people into prison camps, made it illegal to follow God. Same thing. Who's doing that? Satan's doing that. At the same time, the Soviet Union, what else are they against? They're against Christians. Communism. What else were they against? They were against Jews. They were the chief, if you remember, it's not so long ago, they were the arch enemy of Israel. They tried to destroy Israel. They funded all the terror. They funded every enemy of Israel. They helped start wars to destroy Israel. So who's that? That's Satan. They had the throne of Satan. Not only that, here's something else. In 1948, now the altar is still in Berlin, but it's under the Soviet Union's power. But in 1948, they actually take the altar from East Berlin and bring it to the Soviet Union. So the Soviet Union actually has the altar now.
Now?
Well, no. Well, there's more to it.
Oh my.
There's more to it. Where's that altar?
Yeah.
And so,
I mean, my mind's going crazy because all the players, you just, you know,
yeah,
we've been there and done that, and it sounds a little bit what's going on in America right now. My God,
oh,
my
there's
God,
a lot.
what's
Oh,
going on?
when we get to the last part,
Yeah,
that's okay.
my brain's
Yeah.
going to explode.
Oh boy. Okay,
Yeah.
Rabbi, keep going.
So the year it was in Berlin up till 1948. Then they move it.
Uh-huh.
Well, in 1948, suddenly the world is brought to a brink of potential destruction. It's the Berlin crisis. The Soviet Union cuts off Berlin. There's a whole thing going for America. It lasts till about 1949. Now the altar is in Russia. You don't have any more problems like that in Berlin until they return the altar to Berlin, which I'm going to mention in a moment. What happens? But here's something else about communism. Marx. There's something about Karl Marx. Karl Marx was the son of rabbis. At one point, he considered Christianity, but he rejected Christianity, and he did something. Now listen to what Karl Marx wrote. He wrote kind of a poem. Listen to what he wrote. He said, "A God has snatched from me everything. Nothing but revenge is left to me. I will build my throne high overhead. Cold, tremendous shall its summit be. I will build my throne high." What does God say that